Good day to you folks out there in the interwebs. I hope you're feeling well today. Welcome to Philosophy Roulette. This is number 61. Number 61. Yeah, so that's a lot. I was doing a bunch today. Anyways, let's get going. Here we are at the Phil papers, and let's look at some of the new stuff. I think I'll check out, see what's new today, if anything. Oh, new books. Moral Psychology of Boredom. Interesting. Contextual Ontology and Contemporary Physics. AFQ. Hey, more on boredom. Alright, so let's go check out AFQ. Let's see what that actually is. American Philosophical Quarterly. Hmm. 12 pages. Reasonable. Let's get the... see if there's like even newer stuff. What's that boredom paper? Let's see if it's here. The basing relation and the impossibility of the debasing demon. Well, that sounds exciting. 13 pages, that's a possibility. Let's see what else we got. Not seeing anything else of length. Well, let's go with the debasing demon if it's possible to read. I hope it's not too long. It's Descartes' demon. Alright, let's see. Let's go for it then. Hopefully it's not too long. Actually, you know what? Should probably download the file first to make sure it's not like 30 pages, because sometimes they're like teeny itsy little font. Yeah, see, here's the problem. 17 pages, I mean, is okay if it's double spaced, but it's not is really it would take a long time for me to go through. Okay, too bad. Not gonna do that one then. Goodbye. Alright, so next, inquiry. Let's see what inquiry has. It's 11 pages. Let's see, this one is 4 pages. Preface. Okay, nope. Heidegger's Nietzsche. 12 pages. See if we can get that one, because we have not done any Nietzsche, we've not done any Heidegger. Nope. Okay. So it could have been fun, but if it ain't here, it ain't no fun. Moral realism and vagueness. Yep, that's it. Oh, Kant and the duty to promote one's happiness. Let's see. Immoral lies and partial beliefs. Let's see. Alright, what else we got? Rethinking friendship. Talk about friendship. Let's see. Kierkegaard argument Kant's moral. I don't know. Kierkegaard Kant. Is this what democracy looks like? Well, who knows what it looks like. Alright, so let's see how long these are. If we can. See, 1 to 13 and kind of a nicely spaced font. I could handle that. Let's see what this one is. Rethinking friendship. 1 to 21. Okay, so we've got a 1 to 21, but it's double spaced, and a 1 to 13 with a not double spaced. Let's go. Alright, we're gonna go with 1 to 21 double spaced because it looks like it's slightly less. I don't know. I'm gonna do. Well, now we're gonna have to go by titles. Immoral lies and partial beliefs, or rethinking friendship. All right, we're gonna do rethinking friendship because, yeah, I don't know. It seems like a more cutesy title. Mark Phelan. I wonder if you pronounce that Phelan or like Phelan. Things I don't know. Oopsie. What'd I just do? There we go. And here we are. Yes, if you're in the, if you ever come to the live, you can get the paper and follow along if you want by typing exclamation point paper in the chat box. Okie dokie, rethinking friendship. Rethinking friendship. Philosophers have often construed friendship as an intimate relationship involving, if not mutual love, at least deep mutual caring. However, everyone recognizes that if we use the word friend and its cognates to refer non-ironically to those to whom we share various relationships that are not terribly intimate or which do not involve mutual love. For Aristotle, whose discussion of friendship has been definitive, the use of the concepts involve a kind of analogical reference. Because lesser friendships of pleasure and utility share some important aspects with friendship of the intimate, mutual loving variety, we refer to them using the same concept. So family resemblance, maybe. According to Aristotle, then, mutual loving friendship is friendship primarily and fully, but the other friendships are friendships by similarity. Okay, so they're just like sort of hangers-on friendships. For the most part, contemporary analytic philosophers have followed Aristotle's lead, and they have focused their discussions on what we might follow others in calling true friendships while giving at most cursory attention to lesser friendships. Thus, Fox 93 confines her reflections to friendships of close, intimate variety. Whiting 86 contends we generally take concern for our friends as a component of the friendship relation, that is part of what it is to be a friend. And she characterizes the kind of concern we have for our friends as analogous to that we have for our parents and children. Thomas 97 writes, the term friendship itself is generally reserved for individuals who are the best of friends. And Helms' 2013 SEP entry on friendship begins by stating that friendship, as understood here, is a distinctively personal relationship that is grounded in concern on part of each friend for the welfare of the other and for the other's sake and involves some degree of intimacy. In this paper, I contend that there exists no general reason to restrict our philosophical focus to true friendships, although specific philosophical projects may require such restriction. I also allege that we can gain important insights into the nature of our social interactions in general and even into the nature of true friendships themselves if we broaden our perspective to include lesser friends. After arguing in the next section for the importance of a broader focus, I offer an account of what has come to all friendships that we non-ironically call friendships. All are the product of significant collaboration, norm manipulation. Okay, norm manipulation, collaborative norm manipulation. Well, good on you for just saying it right out. Well, I don't know, good on you for saying it right out at the beginning. Sometimes you want to save your thunder till later. But okay, you get to throw it out right there to give people a hint of what's coming. I then explain how recognizing this common feature can lead us to several important insights about friendship, which we might miss if we focus only on friendships involving intimacy and mutual love. Why lesser friends matter. Before considering whether lesser friends should be included in our analyses of the friendship relation, let's reflect more fully on lesser friendships. First, note that many relationships lacking intimacy or mutual love that we would nonetheless and in a variety of contexts describe as friendships. Corporate employees and heads of state who work to one another's mutual benefit are often called friends. Yeah, but there's like a strategic use of the word friend too that hasn't. It's not ironic. It's like a strategic. It's like my partner in crime in some sense, but like you don't actually have to like that person. It's like your partner in political skullduggery. you may hate the person, but like they may be very politically useful, so you call them friend in sort of a strategic way, and that might not be yeah, okay. But the lesser friendships on which I will focus on are Aristotle's pleasure friendships. For one example, consider three employees of a corporation who enjoy one another's company and lunch together once or twice a week, but are distant enough in age and residential address to practically ensure that they never interact outside of work. These three may be non-ironically referred to as friends by their coworkers, though they are not thought of as close, intimate friends or as experiencing mutual love. Each normally socialized individual experiences many of the lesser friendships. Indeed, each normally socialized individual experiences many of these lesser friendships. Indeed, this has been a background assumption of the literature since Aristotle. Nonetheless, it is important to remind ourselves, since much contemporary work on friendship has directed our attention elsewhere. Yeah, you've got people you are on very good terms with that are that you call friends or are called friends at times. But you don't. But there's a limit to the interactions that you actually have. Okay, that's fine. So I've got this is the very good terms with. I've got the strategic friend. I'm not like the like compatriot in your battle, but not necessarily someone you like, want to hang out with or do anything with. Like a political ally in some sense is often called a friend. Right. Next, note that lesser pleasure friendships encompass a large variety of relationships and are often activity-centric. Yeah, you do stuff with people. Drinking buddies are sometimes taken as prototypical instances of lesser friendships, but in truth there are as many sorts of lesser friendships as there are activities which people enjoy together. For example, tennis, fishing, board games, etc. This includes sex and erotic friendships are a notable subset of pleasure friendships. Well, yeah, you have fuck buddies, you can have friends with benefits, I guess you could call them. Yeah, so the with benefits then would be the more important part of the friends with benefits statement. Not friends, but you're with benefits, and that makes you friends. While lesser friendships may be focused on a particular activity, many involve a mix of pleasurable activities. Indeed, it is not uncommon for a friendship to blossom from a single shared interest to include many others. Finally, note that lesser friendships occupy a gradation. We have already seen how they can be single track, focused on one common interest, or multi-dimensional, encompassing many activities. They also seem to almost imperceptibly develop from non-relationships into true friendships. A friendship is one of the most common things that one might be said to strike up. Yet it will often go unremarked and even unnoticed until further reflection that two acquaintances have transitioned into the lesser friend zone. On the other end of the spectrum, we can often not retrospectively recall when any of our besties became more than lesser friends. Many of the relationships that we refer to as friendships do not involve deep mutual caring or lack the sort of intimacy that has been attributed to true friendships. No one disputes this. However, many philosophers ignore these lesser relationships and focus discussion on true friendships. Is there some general reason for adopting this exclusionary approach? Several considerations may initially be thought to favor exclusion, although I will argue that none of these is ultimately compelling. While specific projects may require theorists to focus on specific varieties of friendship, the true friendship in particular, there is no general reason that the philosophy of friendship should be devoted exclusively to any one variety of what I will argue is a multifaceted human relationship. One may favor the exclusionary approach on the grounds that true friendships are the best friendships, or that they matter more to us than lesser friendships. Even if we grant this, the consideration does not clearly support the approach. Great works of art may matter more to us than lesser works, but philosophers of art do not take this as grounds for confining their considerations to the masterpieces. Indeed, it seems that some insights would be lost if they failed to consider lesser works or bad art. Without further argument, this consideration cannot support an exclusionary approach. In a more Aristotelian vein, one may instead maintain that true friendships are the only real friendships. Such no true Scotsman argument, rather. Such a consideration provides better grounds for the exclusionary approach. After all, we don't think that chemical analyses of gold need encompass fool's gold, nor that an account of justice should make sense of all deviant uses of the word just, but the claim that true friendships are the only real friendships is less compelling in its own right than was the claim that they are the best friendships. What arguments might be offered in favor of this claim? Aristotle suggests that the lesser friendships we call friendships are valuable because of what we get out of them, useful context in the case of utile friends, and pleasurable experience in the case of pleasurable friends. Pleasure friends. Pleasure friends. That's a odd thing. It sounds like. Whereas true friendships are value only one another intrinsically and also constitute useful context and supply pleasurable experiences to one another. Lesser friendships are friendships only derivatively then because we get the same things out of those close relationships that we get out of bona fide friendships. But one will be inclined to adopt this position only if one roughly cleaves benefits into the utile and the pleasurable. If pleasures are not pleasures simplicator, but instead pleasures of importantly different sorts, then it is no longer compelling to think that the true friendships supply all the benefits that lesser friendships supply and more. Our dearest old friends are not often our sexual partners. We do not invariably prefer playing tennis with our true friends rather than our casual tennis buddies. Our lesser friendships often supply benefits we do not get from our true friendships, so there's little reason to accept the present consideration on Aristotelian grounds, and other grounds have not been offered. Finally, rather than maintaining that true friendships are primary, a proponent of the exclusionary approach may contend that they are one among several importantly different kinds of relationships that are referred to using a shared word. Thus, while lesser friendships may be no less philosophically interesting, they are simply irrelevant to their discussion of true friendship and have not heretofore attracted theoretical attention. This proposal is underspecified, but one way to develop it would be to claim that the word friend is lexically ambiguous, containing two or more senses, one referring to true friendships and one referring to various lesser friendships. However, influential tests for lexical ambiguity fail to provide clear support for this claim. For example, conjunction reduction. You know, it's funny, I was just reading about conjunction reduction yesterday. Ambiguity, the SEP. I was reading the SEP ambiguity article, which is a good article. For example, conjunction reduction does not give rise to I don't know how to pronounce zeugma. I was reading that yesterday too. I was like, I've never seen that word before. Zeugma in the following sentence, as it might be expected if there really were the relevant sensitive word friend, true and lesser. Oliver went to the concert with Reina, his closest confidant since high school, and Panya, the woman with whom he currently happened to be having sex. Oliver and his two friends had a nice time at the concert. Standard tests such as conjunction reduction do not clearly support the conclusion that friend is lexically ambiguous. We are left without reason to treat true and lesser friendships separately. Yeah, they were saying, I think it was attributed to Kripke, that people like to attribute project ambiguity onto things they don't want to explain, and so that's what he was saying. This conjunction reduction and this the claim of ambiguity in this sort of case is just because they don't want to. They just want to separate out the things that they want, but it's ad hoc to say it's somehow fundamentally ambiguous term. I think the point the author is making here is right. There's no sort of fundamental ambiguity working at this point. It would be a little surprising if we just happen to be using friend for two wildly different terms, but they happen to be almost exactly alike because they're both friends. We have not found positive support for a general exclusionary approach to friendship. Of course, philosophers are at liberty to pursue an analysis of the narrow category of true friendship, as many have, but I will contend that something interesting can be seen if we take a wider perspective. Friendship and collaborative norm manipulation. See, this is the fun part. Where did this come from? Norm manipulation. What features, if any, are common to friendships in the wider sense, including both true and lesser friendships? I'm a little insulted. If this person's going to be doing this true and other than true friendships, lesser seems to be a biased term. Lesser, or you should maybe have some sort of other term. Instead of true and false, para-consistent, para-friendships. Yeah, para-friendships, meta-friendships. Let's go para-friendship. All the diverse relationships we call friendships share at least one feature. They are all products of significant collaborative norm manipulation, and they consist in collaboratively agreed upon norms. First, I explain what collaborative norm manipulation is before arguing for its role as a necessary feature of friendship. My analysis begins with the idea of norms, which I will understand following Bicchieri 2006 as clusters of expectations that are self-reinforcing. Descriptive norms involve expectations about how most people in a population will behave in specific situations. It is a descriptive norm that people stand facing forward in an elevator full of strangers. Sometimes I do stand the wrong way. It's a little bit of fun. Societal norms involve expectations about how most people in a population prefer others to behave in a given situation, and expectations about social sanctions for behaving in non-preferred ways. Yeah, if you do things that are unexpected, people freak out, even if it's not even like anything bad. But if you just don't act the way they expect you to, people act really weird. It happens. I've seen a guy got fired at work basically for doing things that like were not like corporate normal, but it wasn't really bad. It was just ugh. Poor guy. He's fine though. I'm sure he's fine. I haven't talked to him in a while though. Maybe I should. He's a lesser friend. Amongst many cultures, it is a social norm that rewards should be split evenly amongst those who contributed equally to a cooperative task. Norms are self-reinforcing because violating accurate normative expectations incurs cost. Yes, it did. The guy got fired. And then his boss got fired too, because she sucked. But it's too bad we lost a good guy. The person standing backwards in an elevator may be socially ostracized. The person... I don't think so. You get looked at funny, but you're not going to get socially ostracized. The person who keeps an also in New York, you get so packed into elevators, you don't have to be facing one way. You face the way that has the most space. That's what you need to do. The person who keeps an unfair portion of reward is no longer invited to contribute to collective endeavors, so misses out on some future rewards. Note that the expectations that are constitutive of norms are population relative. Different expectations for how people will or should behave hold in different populations, for example, across different cultures or subcultures. Yes, standing in an elevator, you do not have to stand forward in New York. You have to stand as to make the most amount of space. I expect that's in most urban environments. For example, two strangers who live in the same city will have a variety of normative expectations about the population that makes up this community and about the larger population of which it is part. To the extent that these expectations overlap, these strangers share a cultural normative framework which will help to coordinate their interactions should they meet. Yeah, we've got what's it called? Li in Chinese. You got like all sorts of rituals and etiquette and things that probably need to be better appreciated here in the West. It is against the backdrop of cultural normative framework that strangers can become friends, and they will become friends through the collaborative manipulation of the shared norms which coordinate their interactions as strangers within a culture. Friendship involves several different varieties of norm manipulation. Friendship involves collaborative norm legislation in which friends form specific expectations of one another that they do not have of others. For example, one friend may broach a discussion of the other's dating preferences. If the other responds favorably, the pair may form a normative expectation to discuss personal matters such as this, even if such expectations are not culturally normative and do not influence the interactions of either friend and other of her acquaintances. Friendships also typically involve collaborative norm repeal, in which friends exempt their relationships from certain normative expectations they have of other members of their culture. For example, two friends may mutually, if tacitly agreed, to reject social norm against casual cursing and coordinate interactions within their culture at large. Finally, we have cooperative norm alteration, in which two friends come to reinterpret the parameters of a cultural norm so that it dictates special behavioral responses within the context of their friendship. For example, two friends may recognize cultural norms of personal space when interacting with one another, but foreshorten the sociotypical zone of personal space to allow for closer contact. Adversarial relationships often involve asymmetric norm manipulation, as when one business person lies by omission to a competitor after unilaterally reinterpreting norms of honesty to forbid saying anything false, but not to require saying all that is relevant and true. But the norm manipulation which is constitutive of friendship is collaborative in the sense that it involves proposals which are subject to veto, in a sense to be explicated. These proposals are sometimes explicit, as when two friends discuss and revise the status of their relation by openly revising various norms in which it consists. But they are more often tacit, as when one friend tells a dirty joke to another, even though such bawdy humor violates a cultural norm that has not yet been subject to manipulation within the context of their friendship. Such open and intentional violations convey tacit proposals to manipulate the shared normative framework that governs the interactions of others within the friend's culture. It's an interesting political thing here with the sort of current political climate being like who can like say bad things, and sort of it makes for a friendly culture with the in-groups. Yeah, so there might be something to understand here in current politics. These proposals are subject to veto in the following sense: if the other behaves in a way that signifies rejection of the proposed manipulation, for example, she frowns rather than laughs, then the friend who makes the proposal will not soon act in accordance with the proposed but rejected norm on penalty of jeopardizing their relationship. However, if the other behaves in a way that signifies acceptance of the proposal, for example, she laughs and follows up with an elaboration, then the friends have collaboratively manipulated a norm, and the manipulated norm becomes part of their unique shared normative framework. Alright, so we've got a shared normative framework here, which is interesting. There we are. So that's really, I think, what... It's not just a society, but it's a unique... so it's a unique shared framework. It's not just a society level. Importantly, collaboration is not mere reciprocation, because enemies may reciprocally manipulate the norms that govern their interactions without thereby becoming friends. Brent may slur Brian, and that may lead Brian to slur Brent. Over time, denigration may come to be a mutually recognized descriptive norm for these two enemies' interactions. The enemies are not thereby friends because the process that led to this manipulation was not collaborative. Yeah, but sometimes, like, that's how you get friends, is because you're both angry with each other in the same way. Yes, a good enemy is sometimes better than a bad friend, because of this collaborative notion. The enemy collaboration is sometimes more regular than a irregular friend who you can't rely upon. So, Brian's reaction to Brent's initial slur did not have the potential to influence Brent's future behavior in deference to their relationship. We'll see. It might be their deference to a relationship because you like their bad friend. Compare this to the related but quite distinct case in which Brent and Brian are friends engaged in a collaborative process to potentially make it mutually slurring a norm that governs their interactions. In that case, Brent's initial slur Brian was subject to veto in the form of Brian's angry or hurt response to a perceived slight. If such veto had been issued, Brent would not soon have slurred Brian again, not only because it is now clear that such an action would anger or hurt Brian, a reason any moral individual might refrain from slurring a mere acquaintance, but also because it is clear that to have done so might have damaged their budding relationship or even caused it to cease. Brian's reaction here constitutes a veto because of its effectiveness in altering Brent's future behavior is due in part to the value Brent places on their current or potential future relationship. Any relationship we would be tempted to call a friendship is the product of collaborative norm manipulation. So this is the collaborative norm manipulation thing. Activity-centric friendships consist in their negotiated departures from the normative framework that govern non-friends engaging in the relevant shared activity. My tennis friend may make fun of my serve, a mere competitor should not. My drinking buddy may stand me around, I will be inclined to buy another to repay a mere acquaintance. Erotic friendships involve the negotiated manipulation of norms of physical interaction and other regarding that govern our non-erotic friendships. Utah political or corporate friends consist in their sometimes explicitly negotiated departures from standard normative frameworks for political or business interactions. Casual pleasure friends, such as ones between the corporate employees of the last section, do not consist in departures from the norms of a single activity, but are rather the products of many small negotiations involving norm of conversation, gift-giving, assistance, and so on. Our deepest friendships are the products of countless collaborative departures from a shared cultural framework, sometimes so many that deep friendships resemble isolated cultures in their own right. Yeah, like in-jokes that... I have a friend... I've known this kid since I was like 5. And so years ago, which is still a long time since we were 5, somebody said something, and then I said something, and one of his more recent friends, who was still friends with him for years, it was like, he just goes, geez, how long have you guys known each other? Because we already knew what the entire framework of the conversation was. And he knew he was like completely outside of this. Because, I've known the kid my whole life, basically. So, Yeah, it was a very isolated sort of cultural thing that between the two of us, like some like ancient joke that made no sense whatsoever to anybody except for us. Anywho, I've enumerated some norms that are plausibly thought to be the target of manipulation for several sorts of friendships, but my argument for the necessity of collaborative norm manipulation is ultimately one of conceivability. We cannot conceive of a friendship that does not consist in some unique norms. I don't know if this is a good argument already. I'll continue. I think there's something that stronger can be said than conceivability here, but let's go. We cannot conceive of a friendship that does not consist in some unique norms, which are themselves the product of the kind of process developed above. Thus, collaborative norm manipulation seems to be a necessary condition for friendship. But perhaps this reasoning shows something different and damaging for my analysis. Perhaps we cannot conceive of a friendship that is not the product of collaborative norm manipulation, simply because collaborative norm manipulation is ubiquitous, occurring in every relationship whatsoever. This seems unlikely since we have relationships of a sort with our perfect enemies. But it is true that our interactions with mere acquaintances, sometimes influenced by special norms, collaboratively reached. However, my analysis includes the proviso that friendships are the product of significant collaborative norm manipulation, so it's just a matter of degree. Thus, I do not typically call my mailman a friend because I do not typically consider the sparse collaborative norm manipulation that we have engaged in significant enough for friendship. Yeah, see, you have to sort of, the norms here, you have to sort of have some sort of valuation. You have to have some sort of value attached to the norms that are being manipulated. So it's like if the casual people, it's like you've got you can manipulate norms, but they're of a very sort of, I don't know if it's just a question of degree, but it's like if you don't put any special value on those norms that you're manipulating, then those people really don't matter. But if you've got values that matter to you, and the norms are affecting them, then I'd say that's more significant. Now, again, this may just come down to degree, so I don't know. But just the conceivability of the norms, I would say it's not just conceivability, it's that there's values that matter to you, and it may not be that you have like shared mutual things, but the way that the normative interactions occur, that they affect your values, I would say seems to be relevant here. Okay. What about collaborative norm manipulation is significant enough? Yes, significant enough for friendship. There's no single answer to this question. Significance is context dependent. In some contexts, small departures from a standard normative framework are sufficient. Then we may be said to strike up a little friendship. Yes, this is like very small. It's like you make a joke with somebody on the street, and it's like, well, okay, but that's not. You struck up a conversation, not a friendship. In others, only relationships that are the product of a relatively high amount of normative collaboration count. This is why friend is sensitive to similar context shifting phenomena as no. But do you really know you have hands? Thank you, more. It's right there. But is she really a friend? This sensitivity does not entail that there isn't really any such thing as friendship, any more than it entails that there isn't really such thing as knowledge. Yeah, I mean, it's like, here's a hand, there's a friend. It's like, well, friends exist. Yeah, it's sort of a, yeah, I'm not, it's sort of just like the hand wavy, like literally hand wavy argument that there are friends. I don't know if that's really saying anything more than that was said towards the introduction, but alright. Although there is no univocal value for significant, yeah, this is value. It may nonetheless be helpful to identify some metrics, yeah, this is better, to metrics to which our significant assessments appear responsive. I've already alluded to one of these in suggesting that our closest friendships involve numerous departures from a culturally normative framework. This is, in a sense, a backwards-looking metric, since numerous normative judgments will, in most instances, have been achieved over the course of a long relationship. But sometimes a relationship may be deemed significant not because past interactions have yielded numerous normative adjustments, but because the frequency with which normative adjustments have been achieved over a short period promises successful collaboration and relationship building for the future. Many of us have the experience of having met someone with whom we just clicked. The current view would analyze such instances as involving two individuals who, for whatever reasons, are well matched to quickly adjust cultural typical norms into more unique shared norms. In instances such as these, the burgeoning friends will often want to spend more time together soon, a mark of the significance with which we regard relationships that afford for frequent norm manipulation. Perhaps another metric of significance is to be found if we consider the relative importance of norms. A social norm may be said to be more important if violations of it are expected to carry greater social sanctions. From this perspective, there is perhaps no greater social norm than one prohibiting killing other people. Yeah, that's why the joke is like, who would you move dead bodies for? Those are your friends. Still, this is a social norm that soldiers are called upon to violate. Indeed, soldiers must collaborate to kill. And it is also well known that other social norms related to death and killing are often manipulated by soldiers. Soldiers may, for example, joke about killing the dead. Well, there's dead baby jokes. Everyone jokes. Like, there's lots of jokes about dead people. Yet, friendships between soldiers who fought together are, for even a relatively brief time, are often accorded special significance. Perhaps these relationships are considered significant in part because of the importance of the norm such fellow combatants were pressed to collaboratively manipulate. There's something about going through difficult experiences. I mean, you only have to have read Harry Potter to know that. Though it is unlikely to be an exhaustive list, number, frequency, and importance of norm manipulation all seem to factor into our overall assessment of the significance of a friendship. Friendships, lesser and true, are the product of significant collaborative norm manipulation, and our interactions with our friends are influenced by the distinctive frameworks of norms which result. In the next section, I will argue that this explains some key features of the friendship relation. I'm mostly on board with this argument. I think it's smart about this norm manipulation thing. Don't quite buy the hand-wavy argument right above, but yeah, something about the values is the value part I quite like. Okay, I'm getting towards the latter part of the paper anyway here. Why collaborative norm manipulation matters. Thinking of friendships as involving collaborative norm manipulation is of explanatory value. Explanatory value. Why? Here are 4 features of friendships that are explicable on the present. Why are we always using explicable? No. On the present account. Friendships and familial relations. Relationships between family members are typically intimate and often involve significant mutual love. Yet intimate, loving, familial relationships are not always or even typically thought of as friendships. The present account provides a clear distinction between the two, since it does not characterize friendship as a variety of love or intimacy. My love for my sister may be introspectively indistinguishable from my love for a dear friend. I may know intimate details of her life, or we may share a common perspective. Yet I may not consider her friend because we have always been too far apart in age and interest to negotiate a significant normative framework. Of course, family relations may involve significant collaborative norm manipulation, and to the extent that we do tend to think of them as friendships. The present account also recognizes that there may be important barriers to friendship in the context of some familial relations. Thus, it is rare for parents and their non-adult children to be friends, since parents rarely negotiate norms with their children. As this changes with age, parents and their adult children are more likely to be friends. The cultural relativism of friendship. Those who have spent significant time abroad often remark on differences in interpersonal relationships between cultures, and some psychological research suggests cultural differences in our conceptions of friendship. It is unsurprising on the present view that friendship in some sense is culturally relative, since friendships consist in departures from a common cultural normative framework. There will be differences in the kinds of relationships that are shaped via alterations of distinct kinds of normative fabric. Well, that's why travel shows are always interesting, because it's exactly the sort of the norms of culture and how that works. I'm trying to think of Anthony Bourdain and what people said of him. It's like he wanted to come and cook with your mom. Like that was like he thought that was fun to be in like the kitchen with your mom and you and like having like talking about like what they think about the cooking. It's like this is sort of how the food was normatively shaping people's lives, and he just like found that fascinating. And so it was sort of how that normative like force was acting. So it seemed like that really got to something fundamental about the culture and people, and he made friends. Like people always said like he was well, I don't know, people I saw after, they'd say about like when he like they wanted him in their home because it was having like an old friend over to talk about like this stuff. Anyway, non-fungibility of friends. Fungibility. I always like that word. On the present proposal, each friendship is the product of numerous individual negotiations. Because the same pattern of collaboration is unlikely to be repeated, no two friendships are likely to consist in identical normative frameworks. Thus, each friendship is sui generis. The sui generity helps explain the unique value of each friendship, just as our many thoughts and actions are possible only against a cultural normative framework. For example, I may shake hands or think of shaking hands only if I'm familiar with certain culture norms. So some thoughts we're basically in the bow stage at this point here in New York. So some thoughts and actions may be possible only within the context of each friendship's unique shared normative framework. If we maintain that our friendships are valuable in part because of what they allow us to do or think, then each friendship will have a unique value on the present view. This does not mean that each of our friendships will be valuable to us. I may not care about the thoughts and actions of a particular friendship affords, nor does it mean that every friendship we ever call a friendship is non-fungible, that it cannot be replaced by something functionally similar without a significant change in value. Nevertheless, it may be that a significant source of value for our best and non-fungible friends derives from the unique and irreplaceable normative frameworks they comprise and our knowledge that we negotiated that framework together. Yeah, so history matters on these things. Friendship in flux. We do not tend to experience our friendships as static or unchanging. Our friendships grow and fade. They change in kind. Activity-centric friendships diversify. Erotic friends become true friends and vice versa. Even our true friendships are not static. We do not invariably pick up with our old but long absent friends right where we left off. We do not invariably pick up with our old but long absent friends. Right? Well, sometimes we do. Sometimes for a little while it is not quite the same old friendship, even though we love one another as deeply and are prepared to share intimate details of our lives. Sometimes we share experiences with our true friends that fundamentally change the nature of our relationship without clearly changing our love for or intimacy with one another. All of this is readily explained by the current view. Growth in friendship is a collaborative manipulation and additional cultural norms. As a friendship fades, it falls back into the cultural normative framework. Initial meetings of dear old friends are sometimes strained because we are out of practice with the unique norms that constitute those friendships. Friendship-changing experiences are norm-changing experiences. They need not change the depth of our love or our level of intimacy. I conclude that friendships in the broad sense are relationships that are the product of significant collaborative norm manipulation and consist in normative frameworks collaboratively agreed to thereby. Furthermore, understanding friendships in this way is one of explanatory value. Okay. Coda, unique normative framework or minimally structured relationship. The account of friendship offered above is similar to one suggested by Thomas 87. Thomas and I agree that friendship consists in part in departure from widespread social expectations of appropriate behavior. However, there are at least two important ways in which our views differ. First, we differ in our conception of what is being departed from when we form a friendship. Whereas I emphasize cultural normative frameworks, Thomas emphasizes norm associated with social roles, which he characterizes as well-delineated modes of behavior which are generally expected of a person given the position which he occupies in an institutional structure, for example, professor or student, or the significant social category in which he falls, for example, member of a gang or affluent class. Thomas calls interactions that revolve around our social roles structured interactions that he claims in general our social interactions revolve primarily around the social roles which we occupy. This brings us to the second important difference between our views. Whereas I can characterize the formation of a friendship as the manipulation of a shared normative framework, Thomas characterizes it as a departure from structured social interactions. Interactions among friends Tom suggests, are minimally structured. That is, in a friendship, how parties interact with one another is not primarily a function of social roles. Alright, so we've got sort of like a negative positive view here. While I find much to agree with in Thomas's discussion, I think several reasons favor my characterization of friendship as a unique normative framework over his as minimally structured relationships. First, a normative framework is a more explanatory, useful posit than a social role. To see the normative framework as are more explanatory useful, consider asking a stranger for directions or striking up a conversation with your seatmate on a transcontinental flight. Do interactions such as these primarily revolve around our social roles? It is far from clear that they do. Of course, social roles factor into two such interactions. Social roles? Yeah, okay. Someone may bring up the topic of sports if their seatmate is wearing blue jeans, or the stock market if he's wearing slacks, because clothes are a marker of social category. But presumably not every aspect of such a casual social interaction will be structured by the institutional and social categories of the seatmates fall into. However, most every aspect of every social interaction is norm governed. Indeed, institutional and social categories are themselves normative categories, so they are encompassed within a normative framework, which can therefore explain everything a social role can explain about our social interactions and more. A second reason to favor characterizing friendships as unique normative frameworks rather than minimally structured relationships is simply that friendships are themselves highly structured relationships. The behavior of friends is often structured by the social roles that they occupy within a friend group: the clown, the straight man, the parent. As discussed above, friendship is also seen as giving rise to special duties, so that far from escaping the dictates of our social roles in friendship, the significant social role of being someone's friend brings new prescriptive requirements all of its own, such as the requirement to set aside other obligations to comfort a friend in their time of need. Finally, communication is an essential activity within any friendship, and as Grice showed us, communication is itself normatively structured. Part of the framework against which these communicative norms operate involves knowledge of the social roles our interlocutors occupy. For example, my conversations with my unmarried, childless friend revolve around different issues and rest upon different assumptions than do my conversations with my friends who are married parents. Given the important role of conversation with any friendship, and the clear ways in which conversation, even within friendship, is structured by our social roles, it seems difficult to maintain that Thomas's view of friendship as a minimally structured relationship. Nonetheless, friendships are uniquely structured relationships, even when the interactions they comprise are colored by our social roles. Okay, that was a fun essay. Things to think about. Okay, if you like this, please let me know. Give me a suggestion for what to read next. And stay safe out there, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye.